You're listening to episode 29 of the Fed and Fearless podcast. On today's episode, we'll be chatting about how to get motivated again when you're struggling with a lack of motivation in your life. So stay tuned. Hi, I'm Laura Schoenfeld. I'm a registered dietitian and coach trained in functional medicine with a passion for helping women just like you ditch perfectionism and use food, fitness, and self-care to fuel your bigger God-given purpose. I believe that it's possible to achieve your biggest life-changing goals without the frustration, obsession, or negative self-talk that so many women subject themselves to every day. All you need are the right tools, the right mindset, and the faith to turn your dreams into reality. I'm here to guide you along the way. The truth is that you are so much more than a body, and I'm on a mission to help you change the way you think and act at a core beliefs level so you can transform your physical, mental, and spiritual health from the inside out. Are you ready to become fed and fearless in your pursuit of a healthy, meaningful life? Welcome to the Fed and Fearless podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fed and Fearless podcast. I'm Laura Schoenfeld. I'm your host as always, and today I want to talk about motivation. Now, we're in a very, very unusual time in the world right now. If you're listening to this sometime after the spring of 2020, hopefully things are getting back to normal a little bit, but right now at the time of this recording, life is kind of on hold because of the coronavirus pandemic. So I don't know about you all, but after the last month of being pretty much stuck at home for the most part, I mean, we live in North Carolina, so we might have a little bit more freedom than some other areas of the country, but at the end of the day, still staying at home for most of the week. I don't know about you. I don't know if any of you are feeling super excited about doing things right now, whether that's related to your health or your business, if you have a business like I do. Whatever you're feeling, first of all, it's totally okay. So I just want to give you permission to feel unmotivated. I know there's been a couple of days that I've had in the last week where I was giving myself a break and giving myself some time off, partially because it was my birthday, partially because my husband and I had intended to have a vacation the week of this recording because it was going to be his spring break. And as you can imagine, we did not have the spring break. We did not go on a vacation. And I looked at this week as an opportunity to just kind of take a little bit of a mental break from everything that's going on, not only in my business, but also just in general in life and in the world around us, just trying to take a break from all the intensity that's happening right now. So all of that said, I have been thinking a lot about motivation this week because I've been feeling a pretty low amount of motivation in a lot of different ways, not only with business stuff, but also health related stuff like exercise, eating in a certain way. My evenings have been pretty lacking discipline as far as going to bed on time or not watching too much TV or drinking more wine than I might normally drink on a day-to-day basis. And I have just been noticing that those habits are things that are starting to become a little bit too ingrained of a habit, if you know what I mean. So I am recording this podcast today talking about motivation, partially for myself and partially for any of you out there who are struggling with motivation the way that I am. Now, the irony of doing a podcast on motivation is it took me a little bit of time to even sit down and record this because I was not feeling very motivated to do a podcast. So again, it's very fresh for me experiencing this lack of motivation. And like I said, I bet there's a lot of people out there that are feeling the same way in a lot of different areas of your life because of everything that's going on in the world, feeling kind of stuck, feeling kind of, just in a standstill. And I want to help you all get out of it the way that I am working on getting out of it as well. So when we talk about motivation, you may have heard this before, but motivation in and of itself is somewhat of a myth. I think there's this belief out there that we have to feel motivated to do the things that we want to do, to take the actions we want to take and to reach our goals. And Honestly, after working, this is my 7th year in online business. I went to graduate school, so I have a lot of education under my belt that took a lot of effort to achieve. I have noticed that there's very few times in my life where I feel extreme levels of motivation to do work. That could just be me as a personality trait. I have realized over the past month that if given the opportunity to just hang out and spend time with people that I'm friends with, or spend time with my husband or my family, I would kind of rather be doing that than recording a podcast or writing a blog or, planning social media posts, that kind of thing. The actions that I take on a week-to-week basis are not necessarily things that I absolutely love doing, if that makes sense. And I've been using this time with the whole coronavirus shutdown happening to reevaluate the way that I spend my time during my weeks, because I've realized that I don't necessarily set my week up to best align with the kind of personality that I have and the kind of personality that requires some downtime, requires some opportunity to just do what I want and not feel like I'm working all the time. So all of that said, whether you're somebody who works a lot or has, a business and a family and is doing all the things, or if you're like me and you actually really like not having a lot to do and you're enjoying having this somewhat of a break right now that's happening, it doesn't really matter, because all of us have to take action on things in our lives at some point. There's really no way to avoid it. And if we're going to achieve the things we want to achieve in life, there are going to be times where we have to take action in spite of a lack of motivation. So I did want to make that point that motivation in and of itself is somewhat of a myth. Yes, we can feel motivated to do things. And obviously, if you do feel motivated, take action when you're feeling motivated. That's awesome. But I don't want you guys to have this impression that the people who you see as being successful or who are successful by their own definition, that they somehow feel motivated all the time. I feel successful in the work that I'm doing, in the life that I'm creating. And yes, I still have goals and dreams that I'm working towards. But at the end of the day, I don't necessarily feel like I need to be working 24/7 and crushing my goals all the time to feel like I'm successful. So I want to empower you all to have that kind of mindset where you can feel successful in your life and also still be working on the goals that you have, no matter what those goals look like. All of that said, motivation is something that a lot of times we're waiting for to be able to take action on the things we want to accomplish. And I'm here to tell you from my own personal experience and from the experience of many other entrepreneurs and people who are doing things that a lot of times take self-direction to do, motivation is not something that we can rely on. If you're waiting to feel motivated to do something, it's probably a reason why either you're not doing it or you do it inconsistently. And doing things inconsistently or not doing them at all is one of the biggest reasons why people don't reach the goals that they have related to that particular action. So again, this isn't meant to make you feel embarrassed or ashamed. I'm sharing this with you to say that I struggle with motivation. I struggle with wanting to do things that are hard. And if I'm just left to my own devices, I really don't like to work that hard. I've realized that over the last week. So all of that said, I know I still have goals. I still want to take care of my body. I still want to be active. And I realize that sometimes doing those things and having those results that I want to have mean that I have to take action in spite of a lack of motivation. So this is something that I've definitely recognized in the last couple of weeks starting to become a problem in my own life. I'm starting to see some potential consequences of waiting for motivation to take action, especially when it comes to things like my physical health. I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before. If I haven't, I'll have to do an episode on it. I personally deal with hormonal symptoms when I'm not taking care of my health to the best of my ability and the way that I know my body needs to really function at its best. And I'm not necessarily experiencing any sort of severe hormonal symptoms, but I am starting to notice a lack of energy, a lack of concentration. My menstrual cycle might be a little bit impacted by some of the choices that I've made when it comes to my movement habits, my bedtime routine or lack thereof right now, the amount of alcohol I'm consuming. Because again, I am definitely drinking more alcohol than normal. And even that could just be a drink a night, but that's still more than what I would typically consider ideal for my own personal health. So these choices that I've been making over the last couple of weeks, I am starting to see little tiny consequences, nothing too big at this point. But knowing myself and knowing my history of hormonal challenges and knowing the things that I've struggled with in the past when I have let those bad habits become more consistent, I know that this is something I need to nip in the bud now. And I need to figure out how to start taking action in spite of the low level of motivation that I have. So like I said, doing this podcast in and of itself is an example of me taking action in spite of feeling low motivation. It's a beautiful day outside. I'm looking out my window right now, and I really would rather be on a walk or sitting outside reading, doing something a little bit more relaxing. But I know that this podcast had to get recorded. And so I decided that I was going to take action, even in spite of feeling very little motivation. Now, I do have a production team, shout out to them who are listening right now, a production team for the podcast who is waiting for this episode. And I even asked the guy that I work with, his name is Jeremy Enns, and he has the business that does the editing of my podcast and the production and all of that. And we have a production schedule that I am on as far as getting these podcasts out. And I asked him and his team, I think a couple days ago, when they would need this podcast by, and they told me Monday of next week, and today's Friday that I'm recording. And I knew that if I didn't do it today, I would be super stressed trying to whip it out on Monday because I have a relatively busy work day on Monday. And so knowing that I had this production team waiting for this episode, at some point I had to do it, right? Like there wasn't necessarily an opportunity to just put it off indefinitely. And I will talk about the benefit of having accountability in a few minutes when it comes to motivation. But the fact is that I tend to be a procrastinator. And if you're an entrepreneur that's working for yourself and you struggle with procrastination, it can get kind of a little tricky to get anything done because in a lot of cases, I'm the only person that is expecting me to do the work. I actually try to set up my work life to include other people to be motivated and accountable to. And again, we'll talk about this in a minute, but it's something that taking action when motivation is low is something that I'm always working on, because even in college and grad school, I tended to leave things to the last minute. It's kind of a habit. Like even if I think back to high school, there would be classes that I was in that I would be doing the homework for that class in the in-between period. So I would get to that class a little early, sit down, whip out my homework, and like rush to get it done literally minutes before the bell rang for the start of class. So this is something that is definitely a characteristic of mine, to be a procrastinator. I'm not wanting to continue living that way, and I'm working on becoming more consistent with getting things done on time, ahead of time, even doing things so that there is plenty of time leading into when they're actually due. And so this is something that I'm working on in my own life. And like I said, as an entrepreneur, it's something that is really, really important to the success of my business. I also mentor other nutritionists, dietitians, and health coaches in growing their business. So in a lot of ways, part of my motivation is just being a good example, and a good, I guess example is the best word. I like to be someone who practices what they preach, and I like to lead by example when it comes to working with my business coaching clients. So all of that said, I am very committed to overcoming my tendencies towards procrastination. And I think this podcast will help you guys understand how I'm doing that personally and how you can start to apply that in your own life. So I'm going to give you 5 steps to overcome a lack of motivation so that you can take action on the things that are important to you, whether that's your physical health, your mental or spiritual health, if it's a business, if you're, in a health business or some other kind of business. Taking action when you're feeling low motivation is something that is a really important skill to develop. Like I said, I've been working on it since I started my business 7 years ago, and it's something that I think can really benefit a lot of us when it comes to experiencing the results we want to experience and living the life that we dream of living. So step 1, when working towards overcoming a lack of motivation, is identifying why taking that action is important to you. The thing about motivation is, again, a lot of times we're not going to be feeling a strong sense of motivation to do things in our life unless we have a strong why behind it. I'm sure many of you listening are parents, maybe not all of you. I'm not a parent, so I can't necessarily speak to this with personal experience, but I know a lot of my parent friends can attest to this, and a lot of my parent clients have mentioned this. Doing things for yourself may be difficult, but doing something that your child needs, especially if you have a really young child that's literally dependent on you for survival, it's so much easier to do something difficult for your child than it is to do something for yourself. And why is that? Usually it's because we feel much more responsible for that child and their health and happiness than we do for ourselves. Now, that's a choice. I do think that we can really cultivate that sense of responsibility for our own outcomes and sense of responsibility for, the results in our lives and how we take care of ourselves and seeing the value of taking care of ourselves. But a lot of times we need to have some kind of strong why. And for many people, that why is related to the relationships that they have with others. So if you're the kind of person that's way more motivated to do things for others than for yourself, it may behoove you to have somebody else involved in whatever kind of thing that you're trying to accomplish and seeing how that accomplishment could actually benefit the people that you care about. So for me, at a very granular level with this podcast, I'm accountable to my production team. They are waiting for this episode and they have their own schedule that they're working on. And if we're going to get things done on time and not stress them out, I need to have this done at a certain time. So if nothing else, I'm accountable and motivated because my production team is waiting for me to finish this episode. Now, obviously, I don't have to do a podcast. I don't have to have a podcast editing team. I could just scrap the whole project and decide that I don't really feel like doing this and I'm going to just quit because I don't feel motivated. That is something that certainly is an option, but I feel like there's a sense of responsibility to you, the listener, my audience in general, the people that I feel called to serve in terms of not only physical health, but also the women that I help with their business development. I feel like I have skills and talent and knowledge and expertise that can make a really big difference in the lives of others. And that is something that motivates me when I'm not feeling super motivated, because at the end of the day, running your own business is not for the faint of heart. And especially a health business where it's very easy to take responsibility for the results that your clients are getting, or feel like if people are not interested in your business, that means that somehow you're not qualified. So it's really easy to tell yourself those stories. If you get into a situation where you put the needs of your audience or your clients or your potential clients above your own, then it's something that can help create a sense of motivation. So understanding the why that you want to take that action can greatly increase the likelihood that you're going to take that action, even if you're not feeling incredibly motivated. Again, I feel called to do the work that I'm doing. And even when I'm not feeling motivated, and even if it would be way easier to not have a podcast or not do social media or not have a blog or, all the things that I'm producing, yes, it would be easier to not do that. And no, I don't always feel motivated to do these things, but it's something that, like I said, I feel like one of my purposes in life is to help others with their health and with their business. And so doing this podcast is serving that purpose. That why is something that drives me. And of course, I want to have a successful business as well. I mean, I don't think I would be doing this if it wasn't something that could help me earn a living and pay for the things that I like to do, like travel or, have nice quality food or be able to work out the way I want to work out. I do have financial motivation for running a business. I would be really surprised if anybody was going to start a business without having some level of financial motivation. But it is something that if you can identify the why behind the action that you're taking, whether that's making more money, whether that's having the impact on the world you want to have, whether that's from a health perspective, feeling better, feeling stronger, feeling more energetic, whatever it is, that why needs to be strong enough so that you're willing to deal with inconveniences or that sense of low motivation, especially if the action in and of itself isn't that fun for you. I really like interviewing people for podcasts. It's something that I actually really enjoy, and I don't have to drum up any sort of motivation to jump on a podcast with someone and chat with them and ask them questions. And, interviews themselves can be fun for me. Doing solo podcasts, I don't know if I would call it fun. It's something that I'm definitely learning how to do better because the previous podcast that I ran, if you guys listened to the Ancestral RDs, I did that with Kelsey Kinney. And so that always felt like more of a social type of experience than doing these solo podcasts, which, to be frank, are difficult for me. I don't love just talking to a microphone and not having any sort of person to actually directly talk to. And so the act of producing a solo podcast is not fun, I would not say. So it's something that if I can identify the why behind taking this action. So for this particular example, it's my podcast production team is dependent on me doing this. So that's one source of accountability. I have accountability to you, the listener, because I'm here to serve you and to make your life better. And it's something that helps me grow my business, and I want to have a profitable business so I can have financial and time freedom that I desire to have. So if I can be really clear about those whys, that'll help me be more likely to take action, even if doing a solo podcast is not something that brings me a ton of pleasure or enjoyment. So that's step one, is to identify why taking that action is important to you or even important to the people that you care about. Step two is to identify one small action step that you can take towards that goal and just do it. I know that it sounds a little bit ridiculous to just be like, just do it. But sometimes you really just have to have that mindset of it needs to get done. And I am an adult that is responsible for my own behavior, and I'm just going to do it. Now, the action itself does not have to be perfect. I came into recording this podcast with the mindset that I did not need to make a perfect episode. I don't need to do a full hour-long, completely beautifully thought out, outlined, script written type of podcast episode. I just needed to show up and do it. And yes, I did preparation. I put out my 5 bullet points for what I wanted to talk about on this episode, but I wasn't putting pressure on myself to do this amazing, polished production. So committing to just doing whatever short amount of podcasts that I was able to do and not putting these really high expectations on myself for the level of work that I needed to do was something that helped reduce the barriers to actually taking the action. So as an example, let's say one of the things you want to do is to exercise more. I know right now a lot of us are dealing with disruptions to our normal exercise routine. And if you're anything like me, not being able to go to the gym, it's a little bit demotivating. I like going to the gym. I like training with my trainer. It's something that I actually enjoy, and not having access to that kind of hurts my motivation for wanting to do things. Doing kettlebells in my garage just doesn't have the same level of enjoyment as going to see my trainer and working out with barbells at the gym. So all of that said, if you're struggling with exercise as something that you're not doing as much of as you'd like to be doing, just think about what could be a really simple thing that you could do towards that goal of doing more exercise. For me, a lot of times it's just taking a walk. I have a dog that needs exercise. My husband is home right now because he's a teacher and schools are closed. So he's around and he's got more flexible of a schedule than he would normally have with, being a teacher and having to be at school with his kids. So if I can just at least get out for a walk on a daily basis, I feel like I've taken action towards being more active. And actually, I really enjoy walking outside, especially when it's nice out. It's something that I will probably do right after I get off this podcast episode. So if you're somebody who's dealing with low motivation to exercise, again, just thinking about what could something small be that you could do, especially if it's something fun, and just do it. Just decide to do it and take that action. And maybe it's 5 minutes, right? It doesn't have to be this 30-minute workout, 60-minute workout. You don't even have to sweat. Just do something that you feel like is working towards that goal of being more active. And I would not be surprised if you started to feel a little bit more motivation towards either continuing to do that type of movement or adding in something else. So as an example, if you commit to taking a 5-minute walk, maybe 5 minutes is like, oh, I actually feel like this is enjoyable. I'll go for 15 or I'll go for 30. Just get yourself doing something small, take the action, and give yourself permission to take a very small action. If you're a perfectionist like me, a lot of times the action that you're going to take, you want it to be something spectacular and really high quality or really effective. And that in and of itself can be a barrier when it comes to actually taking the action, because we feel like the action is a big action that needs to be taken. And if we're not feeling that strong motivation, it's very difficult to get ourselves to take those big actions. So breaking it down into something smaller and saying, what's one thing I can do that would help me take action towards that goal, and just do it. And like I said, if it's a 5-minute walk and you get done and you're like, all right, that was all I wanted to do, that's totally fine. So, we could apply the same thing to food choices. Maybe it's, if you're like me and you're drinking a little bit more alcohol than usual, maybe it's just picking 3 days a week that you're not going to have alcohol. It doesn't mean that you have to be totally off alcohol or not touch it for a month or something like that. It's just, hey, I don't want to necessarily be drinking alcohol every single night. Why don't I only do it on these nights a week? Or maybe I will, instead of, taking it out of a certain night, maybe I'll say 1 glass per night max. And that's what I'm going to focus on. Again, it doesn't have to be this all or nothing type of action. And the easier it is to do, the more likely it is that you'll do it. And doing it will actually start to build momentum towards bigger action. So that's step number 2, is to identify a small action step that you can easily take and then just do it. Step number 3 is to eliminate distractions. Now, I already tend to be a little bit of a distractible person just because, I don't know, I feel like it's a little hard for me to stay super focused on anything that I'm not really enjoying. So right now, with all the stuff that's happening in the world, I feel like my distractibility has just been on overdrive. I am not really I definitely don't watch the news. I still am not watching the news. I'm not really a news reader because a lot of times the news is either really negative or just flat out incorrect in a lot of cases. So it's not something that I see as being very valuable to spend time doing most of the time. I will say, with all of the coronavirus stuff happening right now, like I said, I'm recording this in the spring of 2020. If you are listening to this in the future, please tell me that things have changed. But, just experiencing all of this stuff in the last month or so, I've been on news sites, like looking at my Apple News and, going into like CNN or Fox News. Like, I just look at all of them. I honestly don't have a specific news source that I actually trust fully. I've been just absorbing more news or getting in front of more news than I probably have in the last year. So it's definitely a problem. And as things have started to get a little bit more, I guess the best way to describe it is the shock of everything has worn off. I've just been really trying to not expose myself to news more than just a little bit of time every day to just kind of keep track of what's going on so I'm not completely clueless, because it's something that is incredibly distracting and it's mentally draining for me to stay focused on news or, scrolling through my Facebook feed, seeing everybody's theory about what's causing this whole situation or what to do about this whole situation. I just have realized over the last month that doing that stuff is not benefiting me in any sort of way. It's not affecting my behavior. It's not protecting me from anything. All it's doing is mentally and emotionally exhausting me and draining my time. So I have really recommitted to eliminating distractions as much as possible. I actually just downloaded an app called Freedom, which I'll link to in the show notes. This app is something that blocks websites and apps not only on my computer, but also my phone. So I can actually use it to prevent me from looking at social media or news. And so that really eliminates the motivation to not do it or to eliminate the distraction because it's being kind of forced on me. Now, obviously, I have to decide that I'm going to start the app and, just set the timer and make sure that I'm actually committing to that distraction-free time. But it is something that, once the app is running, I don't then have to use self-control to be able to stop myself from allowing myself to get distracted. So anything you can do to eliminate distractions can be valuable if you are finding yourself getting distracted from taking action on the thing you want to take action on. Something else that I've done this week, it was a little bit of a birthday present to myself, but also it's been something I've been wanting to do for months because we moved to our new house about close to 8 months ago, and my office was one of the last rooms to even get touched as far as like organizing it and getting appropriate furniture or decorations or anything like that. And so this week, I actually ordered all new office furniture and got it set up. Like, I actually did a lot of the setup myself. I was rather proud of myself. It was actually kind of fun to put the furniture together in a weird way. I tend to like things like puzzles and crafty things and manual labor in a really bizarre way. Like, I actually really enjoy doing yard work and that kind of thing. Maybe not the most profitable way to spend my time, but for whatever reason, it's just a nice outlet for me to have something like physically creative that I'm doing. So putting my office furniture together, and part of that is getting an adjustable, like an electric standing desk, which is something that's been on my radar for, gosh, it's got to be years at this point. I've wanted one, and I finally invested in one, and I'm actually sitting at it right now. And so I'm in the process of setting up my home office to be a space that maximizes productivity and shuts out distractions. So, I have a closed door. I don't have any TVs in here to potentially distract me. When I really want to focus, I leave my phone down in my kitchen. I am working on decluttering, so I don't even have that visual distraction. And having the standing desk actually allows me to feel physically less constricted, I guess is the best way to explain it. I really feel like our physical health affects our mental health and our mental capacity as well. And so if I'm sitting at a desk all day in an uncomfortable position, hunched over and like on my laptop and just physically not feeling very open, I actually do strongly believe that affects my ability to be creative and my ability to stay focused on the work that I'm doing. So having this adjustable desk actually allows me to get into a position where I feel like I can really focus on the work that I'm doing because my body feels open and in a good position to just feel like I can pay attention to work I'm doing. So that's something that I'm working on. If you're someone who works from home, or now you're working from home because of all this coronavirus stuff, just thinking about the environment that you're in. Do you have the opportunity to set up a home office? Can you get distractions out of your environment? Can you create a space that's just where you do work so that way you don't have even like the muscle memory of being distracted in that area? I for sure notice I'm way more focused when I'm working in my office than I am if I'm on my kitchen table or on my couch. So I've really tried to commit to being in my office when I'm doing work. And when I'm not in my office, either I'm not doing work at all or I'm doing less creative work, maybe more things like, doing an online program and taking notes on what I'm learning, something like that, that's more receiving as opposed to putting out creative work. So getting rid of distractions has been huge. And even calendar distractions. I tend to block off time in my calendar to focus on specific projects. And even with my podcast, obviously, if I do an interview, we have a scheduled date on the calendar to do the interview. But even for these solo episodes, I basically schedule it like a date with myself. And yes, I move it around sometimes. I will admit, I don't always just put it exactly where it is and then leave it there. But I do block off time in my calendar to focus on specific projects that I know I need to get done. And I actually block off time in my calendar to work out as well, usually. The last couple of weeks have been a little bit like ridiculous with my calendar just being all over the place. But normally I block off time to go to the gym too. So your calendar can be a source of distraction or focus as well. And if you're somebody like me who runs a business or you have a lot of stuff that you're looking to accomplish, I want you to look at your calendar as being a source of motivation and ability to keep distractions out of your life because you've decided that that's what project you're going to focus on during that time. So step 3 was to eliminate distractions. That could be mental distractions, physical distractions, calendar distractions. Anything that's going to distract you from doing what you want to do needs to be gotten rid of as much as possible. Step 4 is to figure out how to make it fun. Now, this is kind of like a bonus step because not everything has to be fun. But if you think about the things that you enjoy doing, a lot of times you don't really need motivation to do it. As an example, I'm sure many of us are watching a lot more TV right now than maybe we normally would. And it's really easy to just sit on the sofa and binge on Netflix or Hulu or whatever kind of streaming service that you watch. It doesn't take hardly any effort. And truly, there's a significant reward if we're watching something that we enjoy. So if you think about something like watching TV, that is something that does not require hardly any motivation for us to do and is very easy for us to spend a lot of time doing it. It's fun and it's not difficult. And that's why it's something that doesn't require motivation. So the more fun we can make something or the less difficult we can make it, the less motivation we're going to really need to actually do that task. And that doesn't mean it 100% requires no motivation. It just significantly reduces the motivation that is necessary when you know you're going to actually enjoy it. So if there's something that you are feeling unmotivated to do, but you really want to make it something that you're doing on a regular basis, or it's like a project you want to tackle, think about what you could do to make it more fun. I have a couple of examples in my own life that I'll share with you, but I want you to start thinking about what would make your particular task more fun for you. One example for me is that right now, my husband and I are very blessed to have a Peloton bike at our house. We did not buy it. It came from our gym that closed for the shutdown. And he was able to loan out those bikes to basically first come, first serve. And I happened to see the post and I jumped on that real quick because I knew that it would be nice to have a piece of equipment like that at home when we don't have access to the gym. So we have a Peloton bike in our house right now. And I do not really enjoy cardio that much. I don't do a ton of cardio at the gym, and I certainly don't go to spin classes. I've done spin in the past, and honestly, it never really stuck. And it's because I don't think I really truly enjoyed it the way that I enjoy lifting. So generally, cardio is not something that I'm dying to do or super excited about doing. But I actually find that the Peloton workouts are kind of fun. There's certain instructors on that app that I actually really like, and I think they are fun to watch, and like just their personality is something that creates enjoyment for me. The person I typically do with the Peloton bike and even the treadmill as well, because we have the Peloton treadmill at my gym as well, is Robin Arzon, I think is her last name. So if you have Peloton and you want somebody who's kind of fun to do a class with, I like Robin. But it is something where the workout actually becomes more fun for me because I like the instructors, I like the music. It's not a super long workout. So even though it's tough, I know I can get through it and not feel completely exhausted by the end. So I've been feeling more motivated to do them than I would have expected or anticipated. Now, that doesn't mean I'm doing it every day. I certainly don't love it that much that I'm like jumping on that bike every single day to do the workout, but a couple times a week is something that I've just kind of naturally been inclined to do. And it's something that's helping to keep me moving and keep me active, keep my cardiovascular capacity up, because usually I'm getting more of my cardio stuff from heavy weightlifting and I don't have access to heavy weights right now. So it is something that I think I can really build my cardio capacity during this time, having access to this bike. So it is something that is more fun for me, and thus I'm more consistent with doing it. Another example is when I was working on building my office furniture. First of all, building the furniture, I think there was hard parts for sure. There was some frustrating parts, especially some of the more complicated construction elements. But overall, it was somewhat fun for me to do that. And I made it more fun by playing music while I was doing it. So a lot of times if I am trying to tackle a project like reorganizing a room in my house or doing something in the garage or doing yard work, if I can play music that I like during that time, it makes it more fun. And it's something that can help motivate me to do it. So even if the activity in and of itself isn't fun, you can make it more fun by adding elements that make it enjoyable. So maybe that's doing it with somebody that you are friends with or have a good relationship with. Maybe it's, doing it with music. Like I said, having music that you enjoy playing while you're doing something can kind of keep you distracted. Even if the activity itself isn't fun, I hate to say that doing this podcast isn't super fun for me. I will say I get more into it when I actually start it. Jumping into it though, like in the beginning, it's like I feel a very strong sense of lack of motivation or just not wanting to do it. So I don't look at recording a solo podcast as something that's super fun for me. However, I have a reward that I've created for myself once I'm done with the podcast. So I'm actually having a friend over this afternoon to hang out at my house. We have some outdoor space, so we're going to just kind of maybe have some tea together and sit on our my back deck. And that's something that I want to do, to have a little downtime this afternoon. And it's something that's very strongly motivating me to get this episode done so I can actually fully enjoy my afternoon off. So knowing that the episode has to get done, knowing that there's people waiting for me, and knowing that there's something I want to do that is fun, that I'll be able to enjoy more if I've gotten the thing done that I needed to do, that can be a way to increase your motivation to do a task as well. So even if doing the activity is not fun and you can't really make it fun, you can give yourself some kind of fun reward that you're allowing yourself to do as a reward for taking action on the thing that you didn't necessarily want to do. And not that I need permission to spend time with my friends. It's more, I just know I'll feel better if I actually get the work done that I need to do and then get that opportunity to relax and socialize. So just figuring out how to make it fun is the fourth tip. And again, either making the activity fun itself, adding some level of fun in the environment. Like, again, music is a really easy way to do that. Or doing it outside if it's something that, like, taking a walk outside might be more fun than walking on a treadmill. So just thinking about ways to make it enjoyable, or giving yourself some kind of reward after doing it that you know you're going to enjoy, can be ways to make it a little bit easier to get that task done. Finally, step number 5 is really for those of you who are still struggling. If you go through those steps and you're like, okay, I've taken a small piece of action. I know why taking this action is important to me. I've eliminated distractions. I've tried to make it fun. And if you're still struggling to do the task that you want to do, you need to identify why you're hesitant to do it. Because a lot of times we avoid doing things because it brings up some kind of negative emotion or a strong mental or emotional discomfort. Even physical discomfort, I feel like a lot of times is not a strong enough deterrent to do something that you have a strong reason for why you want to do something. So a lot of times it's more of an emotional or mental discomfort that we're trying to avoid. For me, I honestly still get nervous doing solo podcasts. Now, at this point, however long I've been recording, I don't feel nervous anymore. Gosh, 40 minutes. See, I didn't even know I was going to go in for a 40-minute episode, 40 plus minutes, I guess, at this point. I went in thinking this might be 20 minutes, and that's totally fine. So again, committing to doing something small, you may be surprised it ends up being more than what you expected. But like I said, I still get nervous doing solo podcasts because for me, they're much harder than interviews. For whatever reason, I just am not 100% comfortable doing them. I think a lot of it comes down to, first of all, lack of practice, because I only do about one solo episode a month. So it's not something I'm doing all the time. And I've had experiences in the past with my old podcast where I would get negative comments or criticism about whatever somebody wanted to criticize me about. So sometimes it would be my voice. Sometimes it would be the way that Kelsey and I were talking with each other. Maybe it was, somebody arguing that what I said about a certain nutrition or lifestyle change or supplement or whatever the topic was, maybe they said I was wrong. There was a lot of opportunity for criticism in the old podcast. Now, the new one probably has the same opportunity. For whatever reason, I have not gotten the same level of criticism for this one. Maybe I'm just better at it than I was when we were doing the ancestral RDs. Or maybe the people that listen are just way cooler and nicer. So if that's you, then I appreciate you, being supportive and not criticizing me for things like my voice or something like that in a lot of ways is out of my control. But I think some of those experiences with my last podcast is something that creates that mental or emotional discomfort for me doing a solo episode. And it's something that I'm very aware of, but generally, I have found in my life, I do not like to feel incompetent or unskilled in anything. So if I know that I'm going to be bad at something, or I think I'm going to be bad at something, a lot of times I avoid doing that thing because I don't like being bad at stuff. Now, obviously, that's ridiculous. We all have to start somewhere. And saying that I can only do something if I'm good at it is basically a recipe for never doing anything, because nobody starts. I mean, I guess maybe there's prodigies and, natural given talent. But at the end of the day, I don't think most people start off being completely competent in anything. So for me, it's just something I have had to work through as an entrepreneur, to take action in spite of feeling a lack of skill or competency. And for me right now, doing a solo podcast episode is something I still feel not an expert in or not fully skilled in. And so it is something that makes me nervous. And like I said, just being totally honest, I know that I'll get better at it over time and it'll get less uncomfortable over time. But right now, it's still something that creates an emotional response that is not pleasant for me. And that's one of the big reasons why I don't feel super motivated to do a solo podcast episode. It's a big reason why there's many other things in my business that I know I could be doing that I feel a strong hesitation about. And if I'm honest with myself, I know it's because I don't want to be opening myself up for criticism or for judgment. And it's something that I'm constantly working on as a business owner. And it's something that I teach my business mentoring clients how to overcome as well, because we all feel it. And those of us who end up being successful are just the people who are willing to work through that discomfort, more or less. I mean, maybe there's some people out there that are so incredibly narcissistic that they never feel any sort of sense of, low self-image or lack of self-confidence, but pretty much everybody that I work with experiences a lack of self-confidence in something at some point, and it is something that needs to be basically just worked through if we want to get to the next level in our life and in our business. So like I said, for me, a lot of times it just comes down to allowing myself to feel nervous and saying, whatever, I'm just going to do it anyway. And even if it's terrible, oh, well, hopefully this episode has been helpful for you guys or enjoyable. And if it's not, then okay, that's fine. It is what it is. So I have just learned how to identify the reason why I'm hesitant to do things from an emotional or mental perspective, and really just take action in spite of feeling that way. And it's not that I try to suppress that emotion. It's more just that I don't let it stop me from taking action. So for you, maybe, just to go with the exercise example, maybe you feel embarrassed about the way your body looks, or about your weight, or about not being super competent with the style of workout that you're looking at doing. Like if it's weightlifting and you don't know how to do it, you might feel embarrassed or feel like people are going to look at you, or whatever it is. There could be some of that emotion coming up when you think about going to the gym. And so feeling that way is something that can really deter you from actually doing the thing you want to do. So if you're somebody who wants to learn how to weightlift, but you really feel very embarrassed about your lack of skill or your lack of knowledge or the way your body looks while you're doing it, that could be enough to actually stop you from doing it if you let it. So that's why figuring out the emotional reason behind why you're so hesitant to do something is so important, because if you're going to move past that, you have to deal with that emotional challenge so that you can free yourself up to do the thing that you want to do. Again, for me, it oftentimes comes down to not wanting to be seen as unprofessional or incompetent, or, whatever kind of weird stories that I might tell myself about my ability to do a solo episode. It is something that I just have to identify and say, okay, that's how I feel, but I'm going to do it anyway, because the only way I'm ever going to not feel that way is by doing it multiple times to get to a place where I am no longer nervous about it. So that's step 5. If you're still struggling with feeling hesitant to take action on something, you really need to identify the emotional reason why it's something that you're so hesitant to do. I would say 99% of the time there's some kind of emotional block that you're experiencing, and identifying that emotional block is going to help you actually take action towards the thing you want to do. All right. So those were my 5 tips. So just as a recap, I have step 1 is to identify why taking action is important to you. Step 2 is identify one small action step you can take and just do that small action. Step 3 is to eliminate distractions, both mentally and environmentally. Step 4 is to figure out how to make that activity fun or reward yourself with something fun after doing the activity. And then number 5 is to identify why you're hesitant to take action and really identifying the emotional, mental blocks that are preventing you from wanting to take action on that thing, because they're almost always there. All right. Well, I hope that this was helpful for you. Like I said, partially it was selfish for me to want to talk about motivation when I'm feeling unmotivated to do the thing that I'm literally doing right now. But I just wanted to give you some encouragement and to show you that even the people who you see as being successful or worth listening to, which if you're listening to this episode, I assume you think I'm worth listening to, even the people that you admire struggle with low motivation or feel low motivation. I don't even like the word struggle because it's only a struggle if it prevents you from taking action. So if you're feeling a lack of motivation right now, like I said, first of all, do not judge yourself for it. I think we're all, at the time of this podcast, we're all feeling somewhat discombobulated, out of our normal routine, stressed, whatever it is. And that's something that can easily cut into motivation. So don't judge yourself for it. Acknowledge it, maybe give yourself some extra time to relax or to not do something productive and to take time off from whatever maybe you'd normally be putting a ton of energy into. And then if you feel like you're at a place where you do want to start taking action again, which like I said, that's kind of where I'm at now after a couple weeks of being really low motivation and not doing a ton of stuff with my business or with my health or anything like that. I'm now starting to get to a place where I'm like, okay, I really do want to start taking more action. I don't feel super motivated, but what can I do to get myself taking action without waiting to feel motivated? So that's really what inspired this podcast. And like I said, I'm right there with you. And so I know how you're feeling. And I'm here to help you get to where you want to be, whether that's in your physical health and your health goals, or if you're a business owner like me and you want to reach the next level in your business. So I hope that this was helpful. Feel free to leave me a comment in the comments below this episode on my website, lauraschoenfeldrd.com. I always love hearing from you. Let me know if you have any feedback about the podcast in general. Hopefully it's constructive feedback, something that I can actually work on or something that you'd like me to do more of. And of course, I'm always happy to receive positive reviews on iTunes because that helps other people find this podcast. So if you're enjoying the episodes, please go to iTunes and leave me a review. Like I said, super helpful for me to get this podcast out to more people. And if you are enjoying it, I would recommend subscribing so that way you never miss an episode. It's something that I do with all of my favorite podcasts because sometimes you just forget to go look for that episode. And so by subscribing, you get alerts on your phone or on your computer and your email that a new episode is available and you never miss an episode that you might want to listen to. All right. Well, I hope you all are staying safe and healthy and, mentally engaged with life, even though we're in a situation that is completely unusual and really difficult for a lot of people. I'm here to support you through this whole process and beyond, even if we're back into a place where life is normal, quote unquote, normal again. I'm here to help you reach whatever goals that you have for yourself. So let me know if there's anything I can help you with. Feel free to submit questions to me for the podcast. I just want to make sure that this podcast is something that brings you encouragement and practical strategies and allows you to live the life that you want to live. All right. Well, have a good rest of your week. Thanks for spending the last, almost hour with me at this point. And I will see you here next week on the Fed and Fearless podcast. Take care, everybody. Hey everybody, Laura Schoenfeld here again. I'm so excited to announce that I now have openings for new private clients to begin working together in 2020. I have worked with hundreds of clients over more than 6 years on a variety of health conditions. My areas of expertise include hormone health and fertility, adrenal dysfunction, gut health, and immune dysregulation. I'm also well-versed in sports nutrition and enjoy helping recreational and semi-professional athletes maximize their physical performance. My functional medicine training and client experience, combined with my compassion and realistic view of health, makes me a well-prepared partner for you in your journey towards better physical, mental, and spiritual health. If you're looking to build a relationship with a qualified health consultant who takes the time to get to know you as a unique person, then you'll love working with me as your own personal functional nutritionist. The first step to becoming a client of mine is to book a functional nutrition strategy session. On this 30-minute strategy call, I will provide a review of your current diet and lifestyle approach, clarity on what's holding you back from making progress towards your goals, and I'll help you come up with a personalized game plan for optimizing your health. If at the end of this call we decide it would be a good fit to work together on this plan, we'll have the opportunity to discuss my consultation packages and services, and even to get started working together for a longer-term partnership so that way you can experience lasting results. To book your session, go to lauraschoenfeldrd.com and click the menu button that says Work With Me. You can learn more about how I work with clients and book your strategy session from there. I look forward to meeting with you soon.